Let's welcome our guest, Rachel Fleischman. Rachel is an internationally renowned psychotherapist, workshop leader, and dance facilitator with over 25 years of experience. You can already tell why we want her on the show. We're so excited. Her work has touched the lives of thousands, offering a path to wholeness, connection, and self-expression. Rachel's passion lies in helping individuals reconnect with their life force and find healing through movement and psychotherapy. She has a diverse background, having taught at psychiatric hospitals, universities, retreat centers, various workshops globally. She's been featured a million places. Rachel, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Shannon and Jerry. It's a pleasure to be here. And that was a great intro. That just made my day. Try to make my head smaller again. My head's feeling a little big.
Your background and everything we read about you, and it's just so interesting. And Jerry and I were talking before we get on here with you that how we can't wait to get into, the dance correlation to psychotherapy. And we were like, oh, do you think it's sort of like, when you move, it helps your mental health? Anyway, we're going to get into all of that.
Yeah.
But we do want to paint a picture for our audience and let them know where you're coming to us from today.
Oh, I love that picture. And part of the picture is a gorgeous cat just landed on me. I hope that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
It is chilly today. That's part of it. So I'm coming to you from San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah. I've only been to your state once. I've been to North Carolina to teach at Art of Living Retreat Center in Boone.
I know that.
It's a really cool place, really cool to visit.
Yeah.
So I'm in San Francisco, and you know what's cool? I looked at a couple of maps last night. We're right in the geographic center of the city. So if you looked at a map and put a dot in, you could all come and rob me. No. I'm being silly. I'm being terrible. We're right in the geographic center, but if you visited us, you'd feel probably that we were slightly south. So we're just a hop, skip, and a jump from the Castro, which is the gay district that is extremely famous.
Yeah,
we're
we love that.
We have been there.
Oh, good. We're a hop, skip, and a jump from the Haight, which is the Allen Ginsberg place, and a couple other really cool neighborhoods. So I'm from Philadelphia originally.
Oh,
so
hey, go Phillies!
Yeah, I am from the inner city of Philadelphia, not far from Germantown. Lived there for my first 31 years, and then moved here to study dance therapy.
Oh my gosh, there's so many commonalities here.
Yeah.
I just love this.
It's nice.
Really neat. I was born north of Philadelphia in Easton, PA.
Yeah, right. Yeah, very close.
Yeah, right up the road.
That's so cool.
I grew up in North Carolina, but I was born there, lived there till I was 8 years old. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's really cool, Terry. I love knowing that. Yeah, lovely.
I first want to start with, and this is one of a conversation that comes up a lot, of course, mental health and anxiety. And Jerry and I both have been very open about our own issues with anxiety. And I always like to get the perspective of an expert, and let's really take advantage of this opportunity. Anxiety seems to be very common now. And we always wonder, is it because, people say, oh, I've got anxiety, and they don't have a problem saying that. Whereas a lot of people wouldn't say, I have depression, or they don't say this. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like as catchy as saying I'm anxious or I have anxiety.
Yeah. Anxiety is almost like a buzzword.
Yeah.
Depression is not. There's still a little stigma around that.
I remember you saying that on your podcast that I think I really enjoyed it. And I think it was having to do with seasonal depression. Hello, I have that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that world. Golly, you make such a good point. And I think it's because anxiety is energy giving-ish. It can go both ways, but it's energy giving, and it can be what we feel when we have something at stake. Depression they both, in my opinion, zap our life force. But depression is, a lack of spirit, a lack of life force, a lack of hope. And I wonder if it is less inviting to share about or less popular at cocktail parties to talk about, because when we say it, maybe people think we're saying, I'm not that devoted to my work. I'm not working that hard. My life force isn't that strong. Maybe I'm not that successful. I mean, we still want to sound somewhat appealing as humans. We still want to sound, I think, somewhat like we have something going for us. We definitely want to still sound likable as people. And the truth is, the conditions are, two sides of the same coin. Get anxious long enough, you will be depressed, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And with depression, if you sort of start there can be some anxiety. So it's interesting you say that. It's kind of both fortunate and unfortunate that we're living in times where we can talk about. I'm thrilled that people are talking about this. I don't know what we get with each other when we share our anxiety, because sometimes if we're not professionals, we can make it worse. What are you anxious about? What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that might happen. That really might happen. The ship
Yeah.
might sink. It could happen. It happened to the Titanic. So it's interesting. But I think the answer is basically that anxiety is more palatable, and it means we have something, that we're living for and that we're working with. And maybe also with depression, since suicidality is now a word. We never say anymore we try not to say someone committed suicide. We say they suicided, because it's less of a sin. It's more of just terrible problem. So I think in saying we're depressed, I wonder if there's also a worry that a friend will be like, do I need to call 911? What's going on? There can
You're
be that
so
too.
right.
That makes a lot of sense.
We recently started hearing the word, I think it was in a documentary about he suicided. And I think that was the first time I'd ever heard that.
The first time I ever heard it.
But I like that you said, because you're right. The committed does sound very, committed a sin, more biblical and just so taboo. And so I like that you brought that up. I think that's really interesting.
Just real quick, as therapists, I heard a great talk on suicide. I know that sounded weird. A great talk on suicide, great talk on suicidality, meaning the whole subject, the whole container. And this great therapist leading it said, we therapists need to be able to talk about suicidality, meaning someone having those thoughts, with the same comfort we would have of talking about a hamburger. We just need to be able to talk about it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're fine. We had a guest recently, Kevin Berthia. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He is now anti-suicide advocate, suicide prevention advocate.
Is this the fellow who has survived an attempt that was recently on?
22 attempts, but the big one that got people saw was his attempt on the Golden Gate Bridge. And that was sort of what brought him to the limelight. That was back in 2005. But we had him on the show. And I remember, I told him this too. I remember being very anxious and nervous. Like, I know you talk about this all the time, but we feel really anxious about having this conversation. But by the end of it is like you just said, it was like, oh, okay. Of course, it's still very serious and very needed to seek professional help. But he now helps people talk about it and make it more of a conversation that's like talking about a hamburger. I love that.
Right.
But it was like that.
Right.
Yeah. I want to talk about how you got, of course, your experience of getting into the field of psychotherapy, but I want to talk about how you brought in dance. Is that something that, you've danced all your life and you decided you'd bring it in? I would love to talk about that conversion.
Sure. I think it's always heal the healer. We're all teaching, generally speaking, what we've needed to know and what we've needed to learn. And so for me, dance has always been a place to express myself, to let go of everything in here. To let go of all of that and to free myself. And then when my dad got sick and died when I was 25, it went to a much deeper level, where I often say that I danced the dance of my father's death, and it helped me heal. So when there's movement happening, you just lose that prefrontal cortex inner policeman or woman. You just lose that. So in my anecdotal history and experience, that meant being able to move and clear out a lot of pain. Well, wouldn't you know, I'm not alone. I'm one of millions who's done this. So I started to study. I'd always been a mover, never a great one. Let's make that clear. I love moving, but I've not won any contests. I love it. I definitely have some natural flexibility and some natural groove and rhythm, but I've not won any contests. So this never got to a point of being best in class or being chosen for some type of performance, although I performed as you do. Anyway, so I started studying all the movement-based therapies I could. And in my late 20s was working at a psychiatric hospital in Philadelphia, where I loved working there until it all became about paperwork and insurance, or yeah, it was still paper then, wasn't it? It was still actual
Yeah.
paperwork and insurance. And they had a really great movement therapist. And for whatever political reasons, they needed to get rid of her. And they threw me in. They said, Rachel, you do all that woo-woo stuff. I mean, this is Philly. It's not San Francisco. So everything I did, of the yoga and the meditation and the chakras was woo-woo to them. They were smart people, but they did not rock the woo-woo. But they said, you do all the woo-woo. Will you go in and just lead some movement therapy for the patients? And in no way were we cavalier about these things. We did great work with the patients. So they trusted me. And I found a CD somewhere, because we used CDs then, and I popped in an STD player. And I just saw my patients who were almost mute really come to life through the sound. It's not just moving the body. Sound really helps. Music is a gift. Music takes us out of ourselves instantly. So I always say, I'm just cheating. It's really the music working. But when we move the body, so much is happening. We're letting go of inner competition. Sometimes I work out ideas in my head through movement. I would also, want to say immediately, there are those who do not like to dance. I don't force them.
Yeah.
Just like I wouldn't want to be forced to eat a food I cannot stand.
Right.
That is so cruel to do that. So I don't force people. I just say, find what gives you joy. My God, just find what frees you. If that's going for a run, that's great. If it's crossword puzzles, I'd rather it be something in your body. If that's gardening, that's great. For me, it's dance, and I'm not alone in that. I would say maybe 60, 70% of people probably would agree with this, but there's a strong 35 or 40 that have found something else. I also want to say that the sort of movement arts like Tai Chi and Qigong are part of this world. And if you practice them, that's a nice gateway. It's a good, healthy gateway drug, if you will, in the sense that you're moving, but you have more of a prescribed steps that you're taking. But it's so about the breath. And it's so healing. So my late father practiced Tai Chi in the 70s. He would take the bus and the train and then another bus from Philly to New York to practice with his Tai Chi teacher before Tai Chi was cool, friends. This was before it was a thing that people were, doing. It was not words that we use. So I was kind of brought up in a countercultural environment where I saw both parents enjoying music and jitterbug kind of movements. We were very free about that. Like countercultural Jews, we're not like tightly wound. Well, we're tightly wound and anxious, but put the music on and we can let go and go back to the shtetl times. It's cool. Making generalizations there. So that's a little smidge of how I got into this. And then I just gobbled everything up regarding movement-based therapies and something else that I trained called expressive art therapy, which is combining movement, drawing, and writing. You guys, it's so much fun. Because if you're not as much into the movement, or maybe it scares you, or maybe you just get tired, which I do, you then have an hour where we're sketching and drawing with our non-dominant hand, and it's playtime. And then you're writing things. And people do so much beautiful writing because they've lost that inner policeman again, right? It's gone. So people are writing their dreams, their hopes, letting go of fears and self-hatred. It's an extremely therapeutic movement system, Dance Your Bliss. Yeah.
That sounds really interesting. That's neat.
It's also, I think it's now that I know that, it to me seems less intimidating to know, because in my mind I had that you probably were professionally a trained dancer and then you went. So then I go, oh gosh, I would be so anxious talking about anxiety. I would be so anxious to work with that. But then hearing you say, yeah, it's just about the movement, and it, just like similar to how we talk about how when we're really under a lot of stress, sometimes if we just get out and take a walk, it helps. Yeah.
Well, and I was picturing in my mind, like you see people, if you've ever been to a reggae show, or the people you think about at Grateful Dead shows, where it's just kind of a sway, it's like,
which is great.
It's great, right? You don't.
You're in a trance. You're in a joy trance. You're in a joy trance. That's a great example of communal joy. Just all of us, or at church and synagogue, where you go and there's. We were at synagogue last night, very Reform, just the singing and the music, and there were tablas drums. I was like, well, we Jews are really alive people. Not just, we're all alive people. Reggae show, Grateful Dead show, being lost in the music. When we think about, I know very little about like ancient history, but come on, every tradition, I would think, every religion, except for maybe very serious ends of any spectrum, use dance as a way to communicate because it's a ritual.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
right?
there
It
is
is
something
ritual.
about, and there's a word for it, and it's lost on me, but there is something too that I've read that is very healing when you say are at a concert and everyone is a fan of that same music and everyone's moving to the same
Yes.
music that they
Oh, yes.
love.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, again, I'm really bad at remembering words. I'm
Me
super
too.
smart in some ways, but I didn't do great in school because you always had to memorize everything. But think
Yeah.
about that. We're all together. There's
Hmm.
probably a similarity in the way our hearts are beating. We're
Yeah.
all loving this sound. Even watching, if I even watch a David Matthews show, or if I
Yeah.
watch, right now it's Taylor Swift is this sort of a thing, or if I watch I love going back in time and watching the not Grateful Dead, watching, I'm going to surprise you with this, Talking Heads Stop Making Sense. They did that
Oh,
show and I was really
yeah.
touched by, I think David
Mhm.
Byrne is amazing. But when I think about all these other humans, when I go to a show that love this music and are with me in that,
Hmm.
we all have a connection. We're
Yeah.
all here for the same deliciousness. That
Yeah.
is really special, isn't it? Isn't
It
it?
It
is. It's
is.
just a good feeling.
And I was actually at that show in '83, The Talking Heads Stopped Making Sense,
Oh
and
my
that you see on the movie, and it was a very
God.
dancey and very
Oh, and I
feel-good show.
love the way he moves,
Uh-huh.
if you will, beautifully and awkwardly, right?
Oh,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I love that. And sometimes
Mhm.
I'll joke it when I'm teaching, like, let me be the silliest person in the room. I'm not gonna, I mean, sure, I'm very flexible. I have some moves and whatnot. But also, I will say on the flip side, I want to mention when we dance, we do feel beautiful. So I
Uh-huh.
work with a lot of people of size, real big
Uh-huh.
folks. And I work with folks who I've definitely had a lot of movers who are on the spectrum who've said to me kind of like on the sly, hey, I'm autistic. And this has helped me so much. I have a girlfriend, someone has said to me once, and I thought, like, I didn't want to take all the credit, but I'm going to take all the credit. There was a freeing, I mean, this is someone who came to class every day for weeks and weeks when I was teaching at a retreat center. Well, of course, it's going to boost your confidence. Of course, it's just going to feel beautiful. Also, the military, which I know absolutely nothing about, but the marching in sync, the way
Ah.
also that I think when slaves would be doing hard work and have a sound, have a spiritual that they'd sing, it does indeed connect us. And sadly and happily, it makes them work harder. So
Hmm.
for the military or for people who are working ridiculous hours, that music can keep an energy flowing. It can keep a life force happening. But there is something indeed about that keeping step and keeping time in
Uh-huh.
the military that I find fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading something on that recently where that goes back, to ancient times with
Hmm.
war stuff. There was the drums of war and stuff, drums and drum beats to keep everybody
Yes.
moving.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you handle, or how do you work with someone who, because you've talked about teaching these or holding these classes and groups at retreats or different places. How do you, or what advice do you give someone who it would be really great for someone who has social anxiety
Yeah.
and isn't really comfortable about being in groups, but they would benefit from it? Like, how do you handle
Oh.
that?
Well, I love that question because after the pandemic and here in the Bay Area, like we really masked, like kids would still be masking, not to make this a political convo, but
Yeah.
kids would still be masking after 3 years outside,
Yeah.
5-year-olds. So we did lose a sense of even how to be together. So I developed some social anxiety and was like, oh, this is, in a sense, I'm my own laboratory. Boy,
Yeah.
that I would have so many awkward conversations. And I thought, well, I just don't know how to be human. I had the gift of
Mm,
gab before and so on.
that's how I was. Same
Mhm.
First of
thing.
Yeah.
all, I believe in baby steps and I believe in self-compassion big time. That's the way to do it. Don't throw yourself in the pool. That's not my way. It's baby steps. It's what feels good in your body and listen to the body. Is the social anxiety? I mean, I've worked with people who have social anxiety where it moves almost into phobia. Oh, my face will turn bright red. Oh, everyone will see me sweat.
Yeah.
Oh, everyone will know I feel like I'm going crazy. Well, actually,
Mhm.
no, nobody gives a crap. Everybody's
Mhm.
busy in
Mhm.
their own
Right.
world,
Yep.
thinking about their own prettiness or whatnot. But
Yeah.
so that's kind of, when it's really intense, I help people, of course, by unwinding some of the thoughts because anxiety it's lying to us. Our anxiety is telling us a story most of the time, right?
Mhm.
Our
Mhm.
anxiety is saying, here's a way in which you will fail, look stupid, you know, be terribly embarrassed. And sometimes a lot of comedy plays on that, the man pooing in the bathroom on a hot date at the girl's house before they're going to have sex, and there's no toilet paper, and he plugs up the toilet, and it's like your worst. It's like taking social anxiety and like making it 1,000 times fold so that we can all at least go, yes, I worry. And I think some of us are just prone to it more genetically. So first I'd say self-compassion, pretty please. Have self-compassion for yourself. And secondly, I'd say, what do you love doing? I love talking with people about what do you enjoy? And the socially anxious person might say, oh my God, there's nothing more that I enjoy than my gardening or working with clay or lifting weights at the gym. And I go, wait, you're lifting weights at the gym. So I grab something where they don't realize they're already sort of amazing. Right. There's some way in which we all have these strengths in us we're not even aware of, which is so cool to me. So I grab that and I go, could you imagine taking that ferocity, taking what it is when you lift weights? Oh, no, it's different. They'll say, I'm listening to music or podcasts and I don't notice anyone around me, but it's because you enjoy it. So I start with things they enjoy. If a socially anxious person loves football, go where it's comfortable. And I think because we now have, you've like really cool headsets on. I'm just wearing a little AirPods or earbuds or whatnot. Because we have those now, I'm noticing a lot of people wearing them. And I wonder if sure, it's probably because they have great music and it's sound quieting. But I also think if I was a socially anxious person, I'd be wearing those Jimmy Jams all the time because it sort of says to the world, I'm not with you. I'm doing my own thing.
Listen,
it's not necessary. Yeah.
We know someone who doesn't want to, when she is at home and she's working out in the yard, or even getting out of her car, going inside, she will pop her earbuds in because she doesn't want to talk to anyone. And she said, sometimes I don't even play music. I just don't want to talk to anyone.
And that's
so
okay.
You saying that's interesting.
Yeah. I'm a psychotherapist. I do. And that's okay.
Yeah.
We do what we need to do. So I say baby steps is number one. What's it like if that person is at Trader Joe's or Whole Foods and just says hi to, low stakes? Start with low stakes. It's when I work with people who have to do, public speaking at work and they have to do it now. And like, they usually come to me like right before a huge event for their first session. And sometimes depending on when I get a sense if it's really interfering with their life, we really do a lot of very important sort of Sherlock Holmes-y questions. I always say I'm like a Sherlock Holmes of love. I want to get a sense of how much is this affecting them. And if they tell me they're losing sleep, if it's affecting their appetite, if their thoughts are spinning, I'm like, so you're going to get an appointment with a doctor. I don't prescribe medicine.
Right.
I am not pushing medicine ever, but there is something called rescue medicine. That's the stuff they don't want to give you. That's the stuff they'll give you a couple of pills, but if this is the kind of thing, and I've worked with people where they would, I'm being really careful now that I'm not a doctor. I'm being really careful. I'm just saying to your listeners, go to the doctor if something is really bothering you.
Those are important signs as to why you should go.
Absolutely. And doctors are extra careful right now, which I'm so glad about. But what I noticed is this person, I remember using them a couple of times and going, I don't know if they helped me, Rachel. And I would say, well, how did it go? Well, it was a lot better, but I was still nervous. I'm like, yeah, that's called help. You were going to still be nervous. And that's great. And that's great. That's your life force. That's your energy. And then they would just put it in their pocket and be like, I don't use them. I just have them in my pocket. I go, that's right. That's right.
I think your term baby steps too is just so key because I think especially in our culture where everybody wants the quick fix on everything. Yes, it just means a lot to say, it's all right to go in little steps and
thank you.
Work your way through things.
Thank you.
I just want to interject that.
No, listeners, listen to what Jerry just said. If you write down 2 words today, it's baby steps.
Yeah. I want to touch on something that you brought up earlier, and it keeps coming back into my head when you're talking about working with people for different reasons, and you talked about the grief of your father. I'm wondering, and grief is something that we've dealt with and we still deal with, but I'm wondering if grief is fresh and it, whatever it is has just happened, and that person is spiraling. They know that maybe they have a history of depression and what, I guess, without having advice again, this is not advice to anyone out there, but I would love to know, do you have some tips, or is there advice of that person should also go out and dance? Like when you started dancing, did you do it immediately?
Right,
Is
right.
there
Well,
something that like a rule of a period of time
so
before you do
we're
this?
we're all different. I was quite angry. We have a little book. Some people call it the Bible for psychotherapists. It is not my Bible. It's called the DSM, the
Yeah.
Diagnostic Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders. And
Mhm.
I call the DSM diagnosing for status and money. That's the DSM. Diagnosing for
Mhm.
status and money. I know I can be a little bit,
No, I love
you
that. I
know, but
love it. It's a label. It's
um,
like a label that
because homosexuality was in that book, my
oh, I
friends.
didn't know that.
Being gay was in that book. And the other thing that was in that book that was problematic to me was, forgive me for forgetting the terms. Again, I'm not great with that, but it had to do with grieving. It had to do with grief and loss, and that it was made into a disorder.
Wow.
Bereavement. It might have been called bereavement disorder, but it was that if you're grieving for a certain number of months, for a certain number of days, and it's affecting this and that, you then have bereavement disorder. I'm like, no, you have grief and loss.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting in some communities where I teach, really beautiful retreat centers. These are expensive things, but your listeners can write them down. They have classes and therapy for what's called grief, loss, and remembrance. And I was like, oh, I like those three words together: grief, loss, and remembrance. And I think about that. I think of, when you mentioned in your pod that you lost three, I think you said three babies, three doggy
Yeah.
bears.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even, well, I mean, I can't, these things happen.
Yeah.
First of all, number one, I don't remember the total truth of my journey, but I will say what I did. I mean, the moment I can recall that I learned that he had cancer, the moment, because this was a person who was always into holistic health, who avoided Western meds. So folks, do Eastern, do Western, do a mix. But the minute I learned, and I immediately went into a panic attack and was in, because the doc who did the procedure to learn it was quite morose and quite serious when he told me, I said, it's interesting how it just came out of my mouth. I was 24 and I said, get me a woman or a social worker. I was like, damn, where'd that come from? I didn't mean to be abusive. I was just like,
Sure.
so he wanted to give me an Ativan. I was like, maybe get me a woman or a social worker. Cause he was like a bulldog. I love dogs, but this man just did not, that bulldog is too nice. He was a surgeon. He was not meant to be a conversationalist.
Right.
And
No bedside
so,
manner, sounds
right. No
like.
bedside manner. So I think with shock, and then, with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work around grief, what is it? Anger, denial, depression. Come on, Rachel, you can do this. You got to grad school. Anger, denial, something, depression, anger, denial.
I feel
I
like
really suck.
acceptance is in there, but I don't know if that was what was next. I can't remember.
This is
But
incredible because on my own, we can, I can,
yeah.
the listeners have this, but it's anger, denial, bargaining, depression,
Oh
acceptance.
yeah.
That's the word.
Yeah.
And it might be bargaining. So later she decided that we shouldn't put it in any order because who the hell knows? So for me, I
Right.
just bargained the whole time he was dying. I was just bargaining,
Yeah.
like, if we do this, can we get 5 more years? If I
Yep.
do that, I'll never eat sugar and I'll never do anything bad again, So what I did was I immediately got a nurse to talk to me for a few minutes, I suppose. I can't really remember. And then I found bereavement support. And I had no money, wasn't in grad school. Yeah, I didn't have much money. So I found everything low fee, and your listeners should know everything can be available low fee. You've said that on other episodes. I know they know that, but I really, really mean more than ever, because we have this. It's so beautiful that we can treat one another all over the country. It's really amazing. So I found an affordable grief therapist. I remember I would meet her in her apartment that was in a high rise in downtown. She's quite swanky. That's why she could give me a low fee session. And she'd just give me a beautiful hug. And then the therapy, and I had my regular therapist. So because my regular was like, oh, I can't rock this. You need to find a specialist. She knew her limits. And then I found a grief group and then I found dance. And then I also found other processes. And one of them was listening to guided tapes again and again, where I would move and dance while my therapist was kind of supporting me through language. It'd be like me saying, Shannon, take a deep breath, take a moment and just stretch your arms. And you're like, oh, that feels so good. So it's a whole bunch of things. Every human is different. Nobody's the same. Somebody else might not want to go there. My husband's English. He lost his father. He did not want to, move and dance and stretch and talk about it. This is an Englishman.
Right.
It's terribly sad. But we all have different styles and we all have different needs. We don't exactly know what they are, but what's great is the need that you have. It's, there is an antidote. There is something for you out there for sure.
How does someone's listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to work with Rachel. Do you work with people outside of just those courses? I mean, the retreats and the group classes, or do they need to come to you? How would that work?
I do, I'm a psychotherapist. So primarily I'm not leading retreats. I'm in an office sitting on my butt, practicing psychotherapy Monday through Friday, usually not in the kitchen, usually in the office or in the office room here. So yeah, I work with clients. What's interesting for psychotherapists is we usually can only treat people in the state in which we live and where we're licensed. So I'm licensed in the state of California. I'm licensed in the state of Pennsylvania, and I may be very soon licensed in the state of New York, but I don't want to count my chickens. We're working on that. So, if I have the time and energy, I can be licensed in different states, but generally try to work with someone near where you live. It's nice to be on the same time zone. It's nice to know if you can meet them in person, you can, if that made any sense.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, if the money isn't there and we can't find our perfect fit, it is a good enough experience for sure to find somebody who isn't near you and still have that human connection. We feel it. We feel it through the computer. Studies have shown. As much as I love in person, and boy, do I, this is still a human connection right here.
Yeah. How would someone, what would someone go and look for in order to find services like yours? That's not just psychotherapy.
I love that.
They're going
I
to
love
find
that.
that.
I love that question. Couple of Google words. One would be expressive arts therapy. Another would be art therapy. And that can be really interesting. And in expressive art therapy and art therapy, we have not just drawing, we have weaving. Music therapy is a thing too. And we have poetry therapy, art therapy, music therapy. There are so many different versions and ways that we can find healing. If someone is spiritual, there's a lot of really cool things that exist in our places of worship. I would also look at, did I say dance therapy? Ecstatic dance is really fun. I'd look at ecstatic dance.
Wow.
I would look
at
sounds fun.
It does.
I'd look at 5 rhythms. I'd look at that. That's super fun. I would email me and just get more resources from me. I love resourcing people, even if I've never ever meet them in person. It's my favorite thing. It is. It's an oath you kind of sign when you become the social worker, is that if you call me and I know I'm not going to be able to work with you, is that we don't get off that phone before I'm like giving you some resources, or I get your email and get back to you.
Yes, I love that.
I want people to Google these things because I found during the pandemic a weaving class that I did with a paper plate and and some yarn. And it was an arts therapist teaching us a way of weaving that I will look up and send you. Your listeners have to have this resource. I'll send it to you. We put in the show notes. So there's so many ways. I mean, my beautiful niece was going through stuff. So we raised money and she got a horse. She's in England, so horses are a little cheaper. They're really expensive in the States to have a horse is a very big deal. And when she is combing her horse's hair, I guess brushing is a better word for it, that connection. So animal therapy, equine therapy is out of this world. Volunteering with animals, you guys. We can find therapeutic access in ways we never expected to. We know that singing is up there. Singing might even be higher than dance in that immediate expression of changing the mood, lifting the mood. And again, that's why spiritual communities, we sing. So there's so many resources out there. Me too.
To add one too, I'm just thinking of cooking. I think cooking is a very therapeutic thing too. Very creative in the process, and
it is.
Smell,
and
aroma.
It smells. So that's another word I wanted to say to your listeners is think about your senses. Think about what we call sensorial or sensory therapy. I keep this next to me, and you might laugh. It's just a picture pumpkins and spice. Well, you spoke of this on one of your podcasts. To me, to have this near me, and I always keep one in the car too. If I'm under stress, I'm snorting that candle. You want to work those 5 senses: sound, sight, touch, hearing. It's very, very important to do that, especially if we are working very much with our minds and just on a keyboard all day. Have a shower, cleanses the spirit.
Oh,
touching,
yeah.
smelling, all of those things are actually, so yes, cooking is so multisensorial. Also gardening. My
Yeah, we
kids
do
do
love that. We
gardening.
love
It's
that.
gotta be, that's gotta be number one. I don't have that much space here, but my indoor plants are, how I treat them is out of this world. They're gorgeous. I
Yeah.
even go to
Yeah.
friends' houses and garden for them. So yeah,
Yeah.
there are ways to heal, to help yourself, to get well, that are right in front of you, and they're there. I just want people to know they're there. And of course, there's even hotlines. We have 988 instead of 911. If people are suffering now, because 911 would kind of be problematic for different reasons, because it would take you to the police. They have a lot going on, but 988 can take you to 24/7 hotline. There's also other hotlines people can call. So there's a lot.
Yeah, and we'll put all those resources in the show notes.
Yeah,
Well,
thank
should we
you.
get to
That's
her
wonderful.
fast 5 questions?
Yep, let's do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to go with number 1?
I'll start with number 1. Disco or salsa for a dance-off therapy session?
Oh, for me, it's disco.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, number 2, choose a dance partner, Fred Astaire or Michael Jackson.
Oh, Fred Astaire for me.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. These are hard. They're all great. All great.
Moving right along. Bubble bath or hot stone massage to melt away stress?
Oh, that's not fair.
I know.
That's not fair. Hot stone right now. Hot stone. Right on.
Okay.
Right on.
Okay, number 4, watch a comedy show for a good laugh or dive into a thrilling novel.
Ooh, again, so good. Comedy show.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay.
And I think this next one has universal appeal. Ketchup or mustard?
Mustard, 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 mustard. The spicier, the better. The tangier, the better. I could just eat it by the mustard.
I don't know why I'm
Spicy
not
mustard.
surprised by that. I feel like I'm not
Mustard
surprised
is
by that at all.
there's so many kinds with those little grains, the little mustard seeds. And it's funny that
Yeah.
we're closing on mustard, because there's an expression. Isn't there an expression that says just have a mustard seed of faith? I believe there's an expression.
Yes.
It might be in
Yes.
Christianity. I'm not sure, but I like that because that's really small. But if you can start there, it can make a difference.
Yes, I feel that way about hope too. Like
Yes.
if you just have an inkling of hope, then it's the same.
That's the
Yes.
first time we've covered that on our ketchup or mustard
It
question.
is.
So thank
It
you for that.
is.
That's cool.
Oh, mustard is
Well-
wonderful.
Rachel, the question that we do ask everyone, and we would love to ask you, is what does a life well lived mean to you?
Oh, that's so tender. The word that comes to me is be kindness. A life well lived is, how can I be kind to you? And I know that might sound simplistic, but a life well lived is one where we're practicing acts of kindness, and practicing curiosity again and again and again with one another. Kindness, curiosity, and generosity. There's 1,000 other, things I could say about getting outside and, eating foods that you love and not worrying about your weight and being minimalist. You don't have to have a big house. But I would say, if I just stayed with, be kind, be generous, and be curious. It's a life well lived.
Sometimes the simplicity, though, no, not sometimes, all the time, the simplicity of an answer of like that
Yeah.
makes me feel better. Like, because it's attainable, right? It makes you feel like it's more
Absolutely.
attainable.
We all have
You
that to
know?
give. We all have that to
Right.
give.
Yeah,
And be,
the more
Yeah.
simplistic, I think I carry it through the day and kind of think about it too.
absolutely.
Ah.
Look for all of those moments to practice kindness, and you will be a happier person. Gratitude really makes a
Oh,
difference.
Rachel,
Kindness
that's
makes a
wonderful.
difference.
Yes, thank you, Rachel.
Well, we're going to put all of this down in the show notes, but please tell our audience where they can find you, how they can get in touch if they do have questions from you.
Oh, sure thing. You can just Google my name, rachelfleischman.com. I know the spelling's hard, but you can do it. And then there's also blisscounseling.com. And counseling's a funny word because if you're in the United Kingdom or in Canada, it's with 2 L's, but you can try it with 1 L and get in touch. And I'll send you some resources, which I love doing. Yeah.
Oh, this was just lovely. I love this so much. I know that our audience is going to love it. And we really appreciate your time. We're recording this on a Saturday morning. And so we actually love that. Like Jerry said, we feel like we're welcoming someone in our home, and we do feel like you were in our home. So thank you for coming over.
And it sets a great tone for the rest of the weekend. And yes, thank you so much for coming into our home.
Your home is fabulous, and I wish I could have met Betty White, but
Oh,
I
she's
feel,
down at our feet.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, delicious, delicious. She's having a good treat. Betty White, you're wonderful. Give her a scratch, give her a cuddle. This was a pleasure.
Oh,
Thank you so much, Shannon and Jerry and
likewise.
Betty.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.